Welcome to another part of Wakeboarding Unleashed. This time we're going through with Springfield, and we'll be doing that as our next playable rider, Colin Wright. Now, we're also doing the level afterwards, but right now we're doing Springfield, which is the main event for this part. And, yeah, for the most part when it comes to Springfield, it looks like this. It's currently drowned. Pretty fucked up. But, you know, we have a few points to get. It looks like a goddamn hell zone right now. 45,000 point combo. 60,000 points hands-free. Board slide 200 feet. Manual 200 feet as well. We're now bringing them together. And we also have a few things like tipping over the cows, which is a great thing to do. It involved the ass. And board slide the helicopter. So, yeah, a few things here. And a good number of gaps, though not that many compared to the bayou, luckily. Which does make this a bit more enjoyable. There is a lot more going on here. A lot more compact. But at the same time, it is just a kind of bland looking level, as well as the fact that it's just kind of weird how, like, Springfield, of all places, is the one that's basically getting drowned completely. Well, some of the gaps are all just lined up together. Like these, 3, even 4 really. If you continue all the way through, you get this one at the very end. Long way gap. So hey, 5 gaps already out of 20. So, yeah, not that many. Though there are some gaps that are, you know, somewhat difficult. Let's be fair though, when it comes to Springfield, the gaps in this one are honestly fine. Like, there can be some challenge, but ultimately they are fair. It's just, there may be something a bit weird and buggy about them, or it may be spots that you're really not expecting, compared to other spots where you would be expecting a gap to show up. Also, helicopter is another gap, but, you know, you get this cutscene if you grind the spot, and you also get the goal done when you land it. Also, time freezes while the cutscenes are playing. There's no commentary here, so I can talk over it if I want to. But yeah, if you bail afterwards, the goal would not be complete because you failed the gap. The challenge isn't looking for you actually, you know, doing the animation. It's looking for if you landed the gap. So, if you bailed there and didn't get the gap, like you didn't land the gap, you can't then just try again in the same run. You have to restart. Also, this building, not physical at all. This thing is, though. And Springfield, alongside just that weird goal where if you don't get the gap, you can't do it again in the run. You have to reset the entire run. In order to then try another go. But there are more than 20 gaps in this level. Now, that's a bit weird, right? Like, it's Shaba fucking games. Like, it's Shaba games after the likes of, like, Pro Skater 3 and such. Where, you know, you legitimately have very much a experienced developer making some pretty neat fucking stuff. And this is like their big game, essentially. Their big, unique game in the fucking genre. So you'd really think there would be quite a good bit of quality assurance in making sure that everything is pretty much complete. You know? But the Activision O2 lineup is anything but complete. Case in point, the fact that, you know, this lost the O2 bit and instead had to be released as its own thing. Which, good news, this and another game did get released. There were others, like a sequel to one of the O2 games that got cancelled. But, yeah, for the most part, yeah, this game isn't quite as complete as you'd expect. There are things about this that are unfinished. And considering that we have been doing Pro Skater 2X, you might recognize the fact that as I go and do this whole lineup, we get a gap called First and Last Glory Be. This gap does not exist in the gap checklist. In fact, there are 2 gaps that don't exist in the gap checklist. So, while the game is looking for 20 specific gaps, in reality there are 22 gaps. And to make matters even worse, because of a certain goal, technically there's actually 23 gaps. Yeah, there's a lot that is just kind of weird about this level when it comes to the gap side of things. And also when it comes to these paths, because there are a few paths that exist, one of them being what you just saw beforehand, where we can go into this entire area, which is important, by the way. And then there's this one path switch here called Rope Grip Expert, which all it does is it makes the boat go in a different path, where it will now go to the left of here, and then all the way over across to the right area. I don't show it because, one, the fucking video glitched up, and 2, it's not that important. But there are some interesting bits here. And this isn't even that big of a level. It's all pretty compact. And we're taking care of the cows now. And the first cow you can then get housed to plank right afterwards. But then you can't really get this cow after unless you kind of get lucky about it. I will get rid of it though, don't worry. But there's also this here for Downtown Damon's Gap. And then afterwards you can then, you know, really just get across over to here to get this cow on the other side. Like, you don't really need that whole path switch thing in order to take care of a lot of the shit around here. It's kind of unnecessary. The only path switch you need is the one that lets your boat go left. Also, I genuinely do apologize for the video glitching out. Again, I switch my recording methods after a certain level. Because this shit was just really pissing me off to a point where I just did not want to fucking continue with this bullshit. I wanted the fucking footage to, you know, actually exist and not be fucked. Anyway, there are gaps I'm getting as well that lead up to cows, so there is that. And also had to do that to get the last cow, because that cow there is the most awkward one. The way it's positioned is genuinely bullshit. And now I only have 8 gaps left. I'm gonna be honest here. I will get some of them. 2 of them are very easy. Use this spot here in order to get up to there for holy smoke. Then just grind the entirety of these 2 rooftops to get your next gap. There's also a grind on that wire over there down below, which you grind the entire thing to get another gap. And there are some more interesting ones which are a bit more jank and are much longer, in fact. But compared to what we've dealt with in the previous 2 levels, every single gap here is not that bad. Though the tricky gap is an interesting one. We have to grind this wire all the way over to the wall for the wire to the wall gap with a front flip. And I will show you me doing this. Though again, the video is going to be a bit weird. It's going to glitch up because again, my recordings are fucked. But the interesting bit is the fact that this gap, wire to wall, it's not on the gap checklist either, really. And in fact, you can't get this any other way except by doing the tricky gap challenge. If you try to go for that gap in, like, you know, the free ride mode thing, you know, when you're going to do all the free ride challenges and shit, you don't get anything out of it. The gap doesn't exist. So it's interesting on how that works. And there's also a gap here, high wire, which you really want to just jump immediately to the left as far as you can, like as soon as you possibly can once you get that. Because otherwise, your guy will just ram right into the building, and then you kind of just lose out and getting the rest of these stars. Like, genuinely, you gotta do things like hold down the grind button for this next bit, or else you will miss those stars. or having to really get lucky with your jump and everything, your timing, in order to get up on this rooftop ahead of us from this kicker, in order to get the remaining of the stars. Otherwise, you're fucked. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and there's not much room for error because the boat is going to keep going, and you're not going to have good respawns a lot of the time. But once you got it, then you got it. And after that, I then take care of just, I think, another gap beforehand. No, another challenge. Target practice. Target practice also leads to a few gaps, which we'll be getting. But for the most part, it's giving you ideas on 3 gaps. One of these gaps is right here at the very start, jumping across, grinding this spot of the building, and then wall riding this, grinding that spot, or doing what I'm doing here to recover yourself, and then wall ride across and grind that fence over there. Now this one wants you to then do this shit, which you can do, and as you can see here, I fucked it. And because of that, I have to redo the entire thing here, which is annoying. But yeah, for the most part, you kind of do get sort of like the idea of what to do here. I do this instead. You do this shit and you can get a gap out of it. The back alley special. And of course, we then get this gap again, which is just getting for the pipe. Though they really start you very late in, so you have to go immediately left or you're not getting this at all. There's no time to, like, notice this shit. You have to be, like, immediately going left. And yeah, then I take care of the rest of these, which require me to do things like jumping over here and then making a very big jump and getting lucky enough to grind this spot here, but jump around. The game is like actually giving you this a lot of the time. It's going to be a bit awkward. Then letting go of this rope and grinding these spots, which there are 2 spots you have to let go of the rope or else the game gets weird and the grinds don't work. You just kind of phase through the rails because of it. It's really fucking dumb, but you get Chris timing for that shit. And lastly, we are actually doing the gap that I was showing you beforehand, the target practice thing, where you grind that, wall ride, grind, wall ride, then grind the fence all the way around, and you pretty much get the last of the main gaps. Again, there is a gap that exists, which is not in the gap checklist at all. But first, I'm taking care of the challenges, which includes Animal Rescue, a unique one, where we use the boat in order to grab 4 animals and bring them back to the start spot. And you have a lot of freedom when it comes to this level, because there's not like walls that are stopping you, so you can just skip parts of the fucking map in order to get to spots faster. In fact, you can abuse the respawn of this game by essentially just driving forward here, driving forward to that grass patch, going all the way to the fence, getting stuck, and the game just respawns you on the start point. And because of that, it's honestly a fast way of taking care of this sheep here, this little lamb. And there's a few opportunities of being able to just sort of get to spots faster and skip bits if you want to. Though the problem is that 2 of these animals are in this very straight line, where you go around the buildings, you grab this one by a car, and you just go a little bit more of a distance forward to get the cow that's in, like, right on the steps of the building. It's a bit lazy, honestly. The fact that it's very compact with these animals, in that you don't really get to explore a lot of the rest of the level with this shit. Though I will say, because of this building here in the ramps, you can't get stuck easily when you do rescue these fuckers. But there's a cow that you can just skip past this entire bit here in order to get to it. Like, you do not have to actually take the path the boat usually takes at all when grabbing these animals. You can just drive straight forward, and the game lets you. And honestly, it's kind of neat that your boat is allowed to explore like this. Also, as you can see, again, new character that I'm playing as, and the boat has been retextured into this sort of more yellow, kind of racing boat with these fucking race stripes on the back and such. There are some unique boat designs, to be fair, of a lot of the riders. And I will show them all when I can. But it's just interesting to me that this does exist, and that, you know, Shabba Games put the entire time in to make different textures for the boats when there was no need to. Hell, the animals have unique animations on the boat when you fucking rescue them. There was no need for that. They could just be a static fucking object, but they put effort into spots. It's just, there are also spots that put effort into this game where they just acted like fucking dickheads. And there are also spots where there should have been effort, and yet it's kind of lacking, and so the game has like this weird bugginess to it. Also, this video shoot, I get done like the first fucking run. Like, as long as you have a good silent lineup, there are opportunities to work with here where you can easily get the 40,000. There's like no challenge here. And lastly, we have the count to 5, count to 10, and yeah, then the boat race. And count to 5 is this whole entire lineup with the 2 rooftops. You already know how to get these 2 gaps, so just do the 2 gaps. The count to 10 is the exact same thing. There's not much to it. Also, the video will bug out one more fucking time, because of course it fucking does. We're doing the boat race, and with the boat race, ultimately, it's 3 laps, which means that we have to be a lot more conservative. Though, they really trail this shit hardcore. Like, you can see right now that with the fuel canisters, they really want you to, like, do things like jumping off the rooftops and such in order to get some stuff. But at the same time, you have to conserve. You can't just grab willy-nilly. You have to really, like, dodge a whole bunch of shit in order to allow that to exist for your next run. And, because of how little time and gas you have, you're kinda gonna have to do shit like this, just cutting corners, in order to make the most out of both your fuel and your time. And, yeah, this is the entire race, ultimately. I mean, the fuel here gives you a lot of fuel back. So, there's no risk of, like, you know, running out of fuel if you, you know, grab at least 4 canisters, as they can give you back a good chunk of your fuel. Really, the nightmare here is the timer, because you don't get that much time with this one. Especially if you go around trying to collect the fuel canisters. But if you really dodge the fuel canisters a lot, you can end up in this kind of situation where you have less than half. But again, as you saw there, you can get a whole bunch back. No issue at all. It's literally just strategy on, like, what you should leave alone and what you should grab. And because of that, it's very easy to make the most out of this and be able to win the race no problem. Though, they do decide to put a fucking fence here. So, yeah, that whole entire spot I was doing beforehand in the previous challenge of the fucking cow saving and shit, yeah, they left it off like pricks. So that's a bit of a trap. And lastly, it's count to 10. Which, count to 10 is, like I just told you, it's the 2 gaps. So just do the 2 gaps and you're good. Though I will say, you can kind of see the game deloading itself at points during these little slide swipes. Like, you saw that the second building was just not there, and there was a 7 floating over nothing. And you get across to it the camera, and it's back. The building is right there, and the 7 is right where it should be. It's weird that the game kind of makes it noticeable when you can see the out-of-bounds shit. Like, when you can see shit just not load at all. But the game does it. But yeah, this is a very easy count to 10. These challenges are honestly pretty basic. Except for maybe the tricky gap challenge, which does have a bit of a shittiness to it. But ultimately, that's it. And yeah, that's Springfield. Springfield was fine. Like, Springfield doesn't really have anything of an issue to it. Though, again, after I show you all of these flybys of the gaps, which again, some of them don't really do a good job. Like, that first one you saw, I thought I had to grind around those, like, balconies on the water of how the camera was going. No, it's the grinds behind the fucking building. This one actually shows you proper how it starts and how it ends, so you have a good idea there. But yeah, the first gap, the first flyby, no, it fucking confuses like the sign again. Like, it's such bullshit. It's such fucking bullshit. Anyway, as you can see, this is a gap, but the one that we did when we knocked down the tower with the fucking helicopter is not a gap here. And neither is the gap I'll be showing you after showing you all the flybys. Because we have all 20, even though there are 22. We're missing the one that we got for doing the Tricky Gap Challenge, and we're missing the one that we got from grinding the tower up to that fucking flag, like the entire banister up top. From the very beginning of the fucking spawn point, really. It's another gap, and it involves the barn at the very beginning. There's an entire bit you can grind on that should count as a gap in this gap checklist, but for whatever reason, Shaba either forgot it existed or just didn't bother, even though it exists and has a name to it and everything. And is honestly something I would expect to be on here because it's also something that you can quite easily pull off. But yeah, ultimately, I am now going to show you this. All you have to do is jump from the right here and then grind all the way across these two windows. You now have Mind of the Maker. Mind of the Maker is not in the gap checklist at all. But that is, as far as I know, all of the gaps in Springfield. So there are more. There's actually 23 gaps ultimately. But if you only care about the gaps the game is counting for, there are 20. The other 3, you'll get the one for doing the fucking challenge, but the other 2 are optional. Now, we could end it here, but Florida is interesting as it's essentially our quote-unquote competition. Show of technical skills in the Key West Expo, 9 hardcore challenges, there are no gaps, good. There are no objectives, lie. Each challenge is different. And we start off by board sliding 200 feet. Now, all of these, in which there are only 2 of them, are pretty much the same in that there is this open water area, but they put all sorts of different set design and such around, depending on the challenge you're doing. And there are 9 challenges. Every time you complete, like, the first set, which the first set is always the very first one, you get the next set, which is the next 2. Then you get the next 2, and then I think the next 3, or even just 3 and 3. This one is 150,000.60 seconds. They have a lot of grind spots to work with, as well as these ramps to go back and forth on. And ultimately, very easy to work with in making sure all of this works out. I barely even use the ramps, really. I just utilize the boat, ultimately, and the grinds. And, yeah. Just a lot of big jumps you can utilize. It's honestly pretty neat. Well, that's that challenge done. We get a stat point for it. You'll get a lot of stat points, and even a board if you beat all of these. Board 125 feet without touching the water. This is a set design you're going to be seeing a few times. So we'll call this the official look of the map, because this is the most consistent one you're going to be seeing. These sort of big-ass grinds you'll need the ramp for giant-ass launches, that all line up all the way to a finish line. That's hot water. And now we get a stat point and 3 challenges. It's 1, 2, 3, 3. That's it. 20-second combo. We have to stay in the combo for 20 seconds in this whole loop. The boat will essentially just go around this entire, like, somewhat submerged bit of land. And really all you have to do is just, you know, use the ramp, get a big jump, grind a bit, jump off, use the next ramp, and keep going like this. There are a multitude of ways you can actually work with this one. You can wall right upward to grind the rails up top if you wanted to. You could even just not use any of this shit and just manual the entire time. That's valid as well. Though, this one has a caveat in that you're not waiting 20 seconds, you're actually waiting 21 seconds. Next up is 25 stars before time runs out. And compared to a lot of the other star challenges, with this one, you have to collect 25 stars. It's not a case of, you know, oh, you collect most of the stars and that's it. No, there are exactly 25 stars in this fucking challenge. You must collect them all. And for a few of them, as you saw that we have to use a good amount of the ramp jumping in order to grab them, and then jumping back and forth to get them. Really awkward, people could have trouble with it. Once you pull it off though, that is how much of a master you can be, really. And yeah, those count as collectible masters. Next up is Board Slide King, which is 300 feet in one run. Though it means one run, not one combo. Though I do try to do it in one combo, because I want to be just a dick about it, you know? And for the most part, when it comes to these challenges, like, they're not that hard. Again, they kind of count as the quote-unquote competitions of this game, in that they are just these small areas where we have to prove ourselves in order to be able to complete the whole thing. And, yeah, I mean, you're not, like, going run for run trying to be the absolute best, sure. But Shaba games really are just kind of, you know, acting like this is a competition still. In that it's a special event sort of thing. And you also, just the fact it's in the classic lineup of 3 levels, then competition. 3 levels, then competition. Except here, it's 3 levels and then this bullshit. And then 3 levels and then that bullshit again. There is not a third bit of bullshit afterwards. Also, this challenge is a fucking joke. But there's not a third one afterwards. Like, you only get the remaining levels, and that's it. And, yeah, for the most part, the last 2 are very similar in the fact that you have this one, which is board sliding all the rails, so just gains the finish line. And then you have the target practice, which is kind of doing the same thing, though there are ramps as well, and hitting 3 targets in the entire lineup you see here. Also, they say no gaps, but that was the gap right there. That was the old rails gap. Come on, game. You lied about the challenges, and then you lied about there being no gaps. What the fuck are you doing? So yeah, by the way, if you're wondering if you can just go through and, you know, hit all of these targets in a different kind of order, because they just showed you it, no. They despawn the other 2 until you hit the next one. So, yeah, they spawn the targets. Even though you're doing the exact same thing again and again compared to other target practices, with this one, they will not show the other target until you actually take care of the first one. So you can't just, like, take care of the hardest one first, or get it all done in one combo. You kind of get forced to go and do this 3 times. Or even more if you fuck up, because it's very easy to fuck this up, because the ramps are kind of not fun to work with, honestly. But yeah, this is the final challenge. And the thing is, when you complete this challenge, you will get the board. You don't actually have to do all the challenges to get the board. You only have to complete this specific one at the very end, and then you get the board. And what's interesting is the board in question, it's the second board that every rider can get, and they all have the exact same advantage you can get from it. Pretty much you have the regular board, then you have a board that has 2 advantages to it, then you have a board that has 2 different advantages to it, and then you have the special board at the very end. They all have different decks, but they're all doing the exact same thing. And for Colin here, her deck is going to be shown soon, though as you just saw there, she is using a Shaba deck. Because, sure. But yeah, let's go over and have a look at her second deck design. Just getting it out of the way. Because, again, it is useful. It is the Cosmic 143. It gives you a bonus in rail balance and air control. We'll be using this kind of board with our next rider when we go through and do Hong Kong. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you then next time for Hong Kong.